Well, good morning and
Good morning.
welcome to Volume 3 of OTSI's Nonprofit Maintenance. And please take a moment and subscribe to my channel because you want to keep getting this kind of incredible information from these experts in their fields. And today we're recording again, which I'm thrilled about. Karen Nall, she's a certified nonprofit specialist. She has been at the Grundy County and United Way of Grundy County for 15 years this year. I
Yeah.
can't, I can't celebrate you enough for that.
Oh,
Because
it's exciting.
so instead of going through everything again, everybody has heard you before. They know your background. What they might not know, which I do, is how great you are teaching about grants. I mean, United Way, that's what they do, right? They grant out to other nonprofit agencies. But how do you actually write it? People are freaked out about that, Karen.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to write grants. I did some municipal grants. I did some nonprofit grants. I don't want to do that anymore. I want people to learn how to do it themselves. So this is a great start to be able to do that. And Karen has
Yeah.
taught this class for me in the past at the Nonprofit Academy and done so extremely well. And if you're looking for somebody to come in and help train your organization, teach your organization, I highly recommend Karen doing that. She's amazing in front of a crowd. But today I got to grab her on her own and said, "Oh, no, no, no crowds today. We're just going to have this conversation." So again, welcome, Karen, and thank you for taking more of your busy time to do this.
Of course, I'm happy to. Prior to me being a grant reviewer, the past 15 years at the United Way, I was a grant writer. I wrote grants seeking funding for about 12 to 15 years of my life prior to where I am now. So I kind of have both sides, seekers and as well as the reviewers. And I've just learned a lot along the way. I'm, not technically an expert on it, but there's a lot that you can learn along the way, and you keep those notes handy so that you don't do what you did before.
Yeah.
And grants are ever changing, so you always have to kind of stay up on tips and tricks and things like that. So I'm happy to share whatever I know with those that might want to hear it.
Well, you know a lot. You really do know a lot. I mean, I wish I would have had this information before I started getting into this because years ago, I was trying to work on some master's work for nonprofit development, and I there was no grant classes offered.
Yeah.
Nothing on how to write a successful grant. And once you get the grant, oh yeah, you have to administer to that grant.
Oh, yeah.
That's the biggest thing I get. Oh, we got this grant. Now what do we do? And I'm like, what? Shouldn't that have been part of your plan to begin with?
Yeah.
And when we get started here, there's three P's. And if I've learned nothing from you about this in the past, it's those three P's and what
Yeah.
it means. We're talking project, plan, and permission.
Yep, absolutely. And those are so important when you're even thinking about writing a grant. You've got to have a project. You've got to kind of think about what that project will do. It could be in the most infantile stage, but you have to think about what that project is and what it would it provide in your community. Some ideas might come from a strategic plan, might just come from staff talking, could come from a needs assessment that's done in your community. But the project, it could be just kind of in an infant stage. And I really think that organizations should have kind of a parking lot of projects, because maybe there's a pie in the sky project, but funding's not available. It's really not a need in the community, but it's something that's really awesome. Park it, put it in that lot, because years down the road, something may come up and go, oh my gosh, we've been thinking about doing that project for years, and now we have the ability to do it. So have that project in mind, and then park the ones that maybe aren't for today. The plan is really important. And a plan is, like I said, could be the ideas that come out of a strategic plan. but a plan is necessary. How are you going to get there? How are you going to get to whatever it is that you want your project to do? Um, they're basic ideas, but it comes in the beginning stages, and then it develops from there. Just basic ideas. What are you looking for that funding to do, and what is the plan on how you're going to get there? And then permission is probably one of the most important things when you are thinking about writing a grant, because if you don't have buy-in from the leaders, the CEO, the president of the board, if they are not aware that you're writing for this project that is going to involve maybe other staff, it's going to involve some costs, you really need to have their permission, because technically they need to sign off on that funding. And so make sure that you get permission to write these grants, and you get their blessing and you get their buy-in, because they're going to be your greatest cheerleaders when it comes to getting the funding and then making that project come to fruition in the community. So definitely those three P's are important.
Well, and the whole permission thing, I mean, people forget that they don't know everything about their board members.
Yeah,
There may be somebody on their board that has written a grant like this in the past that can offer some insight, that will take a part of it and say, oh, I'm really good at the marketing plan, or I'm really good at, the whole SWOT analysis and what that happens and what our, external threats may be. And it surprises me when I say, well, who on your board has ever done a grant? Oh, I don't know. I said, well, maybe ask. I mean,
yeah.
it doesn't
Well,
hurt
and
to
that's a
know.
great point. Your board is full of talent. They come from all walks of life, different entities and talents, and it may not even be the talent that they do on their everyday job. They could be great at marketing and creative ideas, social media, things like that, but you may not know that because they're a banker, but they
Right,
do
right.
something. So utilize your board, and it starts with getting that permission, and then you get that buy-in, and they're like I said, going to be your greatest cheerleaders, and they will participate if they're excited about that project and what it could do for the community.
It really does. I mean, you have to have a broader scope than just me, us.
Right.
And why do we want that? Right. And so
Mhm.
I love that. Now, getting started, you were talking about doing a project outline. What does that entail, right? You're at the beginning stages of all of this. And
Sure.
what is this outline and why is it important?
Well, so an outline gives you kind of direction. If you put it all down in an outline form, then you can work off of that and expand on each thing. So things like the background. Is this project something that's already been established? Is it a new project that you're offering to the community? Does it have any kind of past successes? And if it does, note those, because that will help you in the grant writing. What's the mission of the project? What is it going to accomplish? What are the goals and objectives, and how do you hope to accomplish it with that funding? Give yourself a timeline, because all grants have timelines. There's always a start date and an end date. How do you plan for this project to meet all of the criteria that you're promising it will do within that funding timeline? Is it going to be long-term, short-term, or is this going to be an ongoing project that you hope years down the road you can successfully get further grants with this? Plan for assessment, because grantors want to know how you've assessed the success of this, how you have successfully maybe meet the needs of whatever it is you're promising to do in the community, and track that. How will that be measured? Is it how many times you've accomplished something with a person? Is it how much you've advanced maybe graduation rates? What is the success, and how would you plan on measuring that? And then what required materials, supplies, what is it going to cost? Do you have to buy supplies for it, handbooks, and what staff is going to be involved? So if you're thinking that this project is going to affect a certain department of your organization, well, they should be on the know of it, first of all. And do you have the staff to cover it, or is it going to involve hiring new staff just for this project? And then do a preliminary budget. You got your costs, You've got what revenue you're going to have, whether it's this grant or multiple grants, maybe a matching grant, and create that preliminary budget and kind of stay on track for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so really just that outline affects really all of the grant itself. And you've got to be able to tell the grantor all of your plans. And so it's good to just start with that preliminary outline and then you can expand on it as you go.
Well, it's true because once they read through that grant submission, they may have questions.
Sure.
They may come back at you, and you need to have that paperwork in order based off
Mm-hmm.
that timeline, right? Your
Yeah.
outline and your timeline. What did I miss? What did I miss? What did I miss? Oh my God, we didn't even do page 12. I mean,
Sure.
and that happens, right? I mean, you send it in, you're like, I completely forgot page 12. Now, talk to me about the vision of the project itself. What do you mean by
Absolutely.
vision?
So there's a vision of your organization as a whole, but narrowing it down to the project itself, there should be a vision. What do you hope to accomplish? And that should be then transferred into words so that you can tell the grantor, this is what I want to do. Um, and I call it kind of like an elevator speech, little snapshot.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is just like our organization's elevator speech. You get in the elevator, you see somebody important that you want to tell all about your organization, but you only have the ride up to the 11th floor to do it. You should
Oh,
be
there's
able
a
to do,
stop button, Karen.
there is a stop. There is a stop button, but the alarm might go off.
It's true.
So just like that, you should have that snapshot elevator speech vision of what the project will do. And so you should be able to just in a very short paragraph on paper or verbally just within a few minutes tell them what the issue is in the community and what this funding would do to help successfully solve that issue. And you should be able to do it in just a small, very um, short amount of time, but then you can expand on that as you have to do a lot of verbiage within the grant application itself.
It's true. It's like a food pantry going after a grant saying their snapshot speech would be um, to bring in more funding to purchase more food for people in need. That's like so simple, but
Right.
sometimes it's that simplicity that is easier to get across to people. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that one. Huh, okay, so there's grants. I'll do this grant, do this grant, do this grant, do this grant. They're everywhere. Well, they're not all for you. If you're running a daycare
Oh.
center, you can't go after pet food for a grant. I mean, unless your daycare center is puppies and kitties. And then it's okay. But I mean, you can't reach outside of your own scope, right? Of your own
Right.
profit. So how do you find them? How do you find grants?
Yeah. I
Go
say
ahead.
that, researching grant opportunities and looking for opportunities for funding is probably one of the most time consuming parts of writing a grant. Writing a grant itself is not time consuming if you already know what you're writing for and you already have a funder in mind. But finding grants that meet the needs and match what you're planning to do is so time consuming. It's very tasking. So the first thing you should do is start local. There are some entities within your own community that may have grant opportunities. They're in your own backyard. And so start local. And what's great about that is they probably already know about you because you saw them at the Jewel, you saw them at a networking meeting. They may already know about you, and they may not know that you've got this up and coming great project that's going to solve something, and so they need to know about that. So start local, start with the local foundation, start with your mayors, your state and local representatives, your local bank branches. A lot of those banks have local grants that are available and that you need that bank branch manager's stamp of approval before it goes on.
Right.
Even your box big box stores and department stores, if you've got them in there, look into those grants. Because if you lie within the footprint of that company's geographic area, then you may have some luck with finding grants within your own backyard. That's the best place to start. Other places that you could look is look to your colleges and your universities. A lot of them have databases in their libraries that they will either allow you to use or do some searching right from your own college or university library. Some of them have the paid subscriptions that some grant research databases have that, they require you to pay for them. But if you have a great relationship with your local college, you may be able to utilize their database search engines right there.
That's a good
Especially
tip.
if you have,
That's a really good.
if you have a relationship with them. There are some grant resource websites. Again, some of them are paid subscriptions, but you can still get some free limited information about that grant. They're not going to, they black out like the whole details of it. But basically, if you do that search, it'll tell you that there is a grant available, maybe within your geographic area for the type of project that you're looking to do. And then you can look a little bit deeper, but it'll give you an idea that it even exists. And then you can search online, just Google. But and don't search too deep. Start with the geographic area. If you only cover one county, then you search for whatever it is that you're looking for that county. If you are statewide or national, then that broadens your search a little bit. But if you want to say, let's do a book program in maybe in Grundy County, then I would search for literacy, Grundy County, grant opportunities, and then kind of see what comes in your search. Again, it's time consuming. Doesn't mean you have to click on every one of those links, and you shouldn't. But it'll give you an idea of some availability out there, and you can do a deeper dive. When you're doing the search thing, I will tell you the biggest thing I learned, and I still have my spreadsheet from 30 years ago when I started grant writing. Create a spreadsheet. It is so important while you're doing this research to create a spreadsheet. And what you have on that spreadsheet is the grantor or the company or the foundation. You've got the date that you did this research, and then your findings. Are they only for Metro Chicago only? Put that down because first of all, you're going to keep track of grants that you do write. You're going to keep track of grants that are maybe potential future, that parking lot. And then you're going to track those grants that are absolutely not a fit for your project, your local area. It just doesn't fit the mission. You're going to keep that on your spreadsheet because 2 or 3 years later, that grant comes up again and you're like, oh, I'm going to look at this grant. You're using your valuable time to research a grant that you already determined is not a fit.
Yeah.
And so keep that on your spreadsheet as well.
Well, that helps tailor your time a little bit too, because
absolutely
you can get so excited when you see a link, but if you had that spreadsheet real quick, you can say, oh, that link is no good. I've already, because getting into that hamster wheel and just continually clicking on the same thing because it's rewritten 1 year from the next, and sometimes that happens. It's not a good idea. Talk to me about guidelines with respect to grants.
Yeah, guidelines are so important, and you absolutely must read the guidelines that they have on the grant opportunity. And because they're going to tell you what their focus area is. They're going to tell you what they plan to fund, what they want to fund. And so make sure that at least their guidelines aligns with what your project proposes to do. And if it's relevant, if it's not relevant, then you put that on your spreadsheet, it's not relevant. I'll use as an example, my organization wants to do a children's book program. And so I find this grant where the grantor guideline says, well, we'd like to end hunger. Okay, that is definitely not a fit. Unless the children's book is about nutrition for
That's
kids.
true.
I'm not
That's
sure.
true.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure how creative we need to be to try to fit that puzzle piece into that puzzle. And if it just doesn't fit, you don't, you don't go forward. So make sure that your guidelines are, or make sure that your focus area is relevant to the focus area of the grantor. You don't apply for funding just for the sake of seeking money. I've seen many grant writers, they have a quota that they have to meet for their own organization, their own CEO. So they're just slamming out these grants. They're writing these grants and they have nothing to do with the project that their organization is proposing. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of the grant reviewers' time as well, because they've
Yeah.
got to look at it and go, oh, well, they want to do a children's book program and we want to end hunger. This is, and they won't entertain another grant from you. I'm sure they keep a list too.
I'm sure they have to.
Yeah, yeah. So if it doesn't match their focus area, move on, do something different. Again, the geographic location as well. If you are only proposing to do this project in one specific city, in one specific county, and the grantor is saying, we're going to do, funding for a place in Colorado only,
Yeah.
and you're in Illinois, um, move on. That's not going to be a fit at all.
Well, and you can't
Um,
change their minds on it either. I mean, because
no,
they're doing their due diligence, and yeah, I understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then part of the guidelines also is the deadlines. The deadlines are the deadlines. It's not, maybe a day later. Um, and pay close attention, because some applications are due via mail and some are online. And so if it's noon on a particular day, you better be hitting submit at 11:45 just in case the internet goes out.
Yeah.
Likewise, if it's via snail mail, pay attention to whether they say they need to receive it by or postmarked by, because the mail takes some
That's
time.
different. Yeah, that's different. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely different. And then I would say another hint would be, look at the funder's website for last year's grant, those successful grants that they
Yeah.
are currently funding,
Yeah.
and see, what they are funding, because that will give you an idea of just some of the things that they're funding.
That's a really good idea too. And you can see who's actually going for those grants, who
Yes.
received it and what, and then look them up and see what they're dedicated to and how it differs from what you're dedicated to. That's a really good idea. Now, to even go for a federal grant, a nonprofit must be registered with the IRS. A
Yes.
lot of people don't understand that. I mean, if I'm starting a new nonprofit, they'll say, well, should I become federally certified, registered? And I said, well, are you going to be going after any grants? Well, no. And I said, then no, you don't need to be. But if you're even considering a grant, I don't care if it's in Illinois or Florida or North Dakota, you have to become federally recognized through the IRS. And a lot of people don't understand
Absolutely.
that. Um,
Yeah.
and set up that SAM account for your organization and get that DUNS number and do everything that you have to do because you're actually running a business. You're just, the C3 or C6 just happens to be your tax status. So
Right.
that's
And it's not a bad thing either. It's not a bad thing. It shows the public that you are in good standing,
it.
because there's a lot they dive into when you do become a 501(c)(3), or
Yeah, and it's getting uh, a bit tougher.
yeah.
We'll just put that out there with the climate. It's a bit tougher. Okay, so what's the process? So you're going to be writing this proposal, and what's the process on starting that? You found four grants that you really
Oh,
want to,
that's awesome.
right? I mean, and it could be,
Mhm.
feeding the children or housing, which is coming into light, childcare
Yeah.
centers, and so there may be a few extra grants available based on what you're looking for. So what's
Sure.
the process once you're getting ready to write your proposal? What's that process look like? Karen?
Sure. Now, some grantors, some funders want to see an RFP or a letter of intent, an LOI. Sometimes they require that as a first step. That gives them a snapshot, a very brief snapshot of what it is that you plan to apply for. And then they'll review that and then let you know if you are then past that phase, and they will invite you to do a full application. Not all funders do that, but the ones that do, we do as a united way, because we want to see whether it's a duplication of something that's already happening in our community, or if there's a way that we can maybe create a partnership among organizations to get a bigger bang for our buck. And so we do those letters of intent. And really it's a snapshot of the project that you are, again, your elevator speech you should be able to say within 3 or 4 sentences. And usually there's a form if it's online. Sometimes they ask you to put it on your own stationery so that it's coming from you, and you can draft that. And I would limit that to just a couple pages. Any more than that, then you're basically filling out an application, and that's not what they're
Yeah,
asking for.
it's
They're
true.
asking for a brief little summary. But let's say they say, okay, that's great, or there isn't one required, then there's that full application proposal. The grant application forms, they provide those and you fill in the blanks usually. I would say fill in all the blanks. Don't leave anything empty. If it's not applicable, you put NA. If it's a number that they're wanting, but it really doesn't affect you, or you don't have a number, then put in a 0, put something in there so that they know that you've read it, you've responded to it every application. And I would say don't alter the applications. This typically doesn't happen, but we had an application one time that we filled in that was a Word document, which usually is not. So every time you hit enter or return, it gives another space and it just makes another page.
Right.
And if their application is only supposed to be 4 pages, it should just stay 4 pages. Don't alter it in any way. Um, the narrative part, be clear and concise. They'll ask you for some narrative. And I would say briefly focus on the problem that you're trying to address in your community, but put a heavier focus on what the solution is that you're proposing.
Yeah,
It's more of a positive.
I
This
like
is
that.
what is happening in our community, and this is how we're going to fix it. So focus more on what the solution is. State that problem very briefly, but then talk about how you are going to bring a solution to it. Make sure your budget adds up. You know,
Yeah,
some forms don't auto add, so make sure it adds up. If you're asking for less than what the total program cost is, how do you plan on addressing that? How do you plan on funding the remaining of it? Is it a match grant, or whatever it is? Make sure that your costs make sense, and then make sure that you have your supporting documentation that they require. Again, that 501c3, they're going to want to look at your last audited financial statements. They're going to want to look at your 990. It's public. They need to see it. And then any other documentation that they're asking for, give it to them. Make sure that you have all supporting documentation that they're asking for. And what I would say the biggest thing is, and I say nothing less, nothing more, you read those guidelines and you give them exactly what they're asking for. So if they want you to mail the application and they say, don't staple it, please don't staple it. Because as a grant reviewer, I do not want to take apart what you've put together. We always tell our funded agencies, it looks beautiful in those protective sheets, but it takes me all day to pull those out if I've got to disassemble what you've turned in because you think I need it to be in protective sheets or tabs or folders. And the other thing I'll tell you is that as a funder, we look at that as waste. If I'm not asking for a binder clip or it to be in a pretty folder or a binder or anything laminated, please don't laminate.
yeah.
Um, I really look at that, or we look at that as a funder, as waste of office supplies, a waste of time because you've had to assemble it and now I've got to disassemble it. So only give the funder, the grantor, what they ask for and nothing more and nothing less. That's kind of
Well,
what.
this isn't unusual, Karen, because I submit a lot of documents to attorney generals, and they don't want staples and paper clips. They don't even want them folded.
Mm-mm,
Because
no,
of that reason, it's like it's time consuming on their end, to take this whole thing apart. It's just like, and what am I supposed to do with this nice folder? Throw it out? It's very
right.
wasteful. I mean, you want it to look sharp,
Absolutely.
but your words need to be your decoration. Your words
Yeah.
need to be better. And please don't use abbreviations. Don't you agree?
Oh gosh, no. I've
Oh my
seen a
God.
lot of times when people will use acronyms because within our
Yeah,
organizations we have acronyms, right?
right.
Oh no, you can't. So I'll use an example at one of my previous places. We had a program called the Social Emotional Learning Facilitation, and for short, we called it SELF. Self, self, self. Well, to a funder, they have no idea what self means.
So,
You want them to fund your self program. Does that mean yourself or, don't use acronyms? You can use them throughout your grant as long as you spell it out and then abbreviate it once, then it's okay to refer to it. Put it in the parentheses, as you are explaining it. But
well, herein referred to as ABC. I mean, you've
right,
got to give them. There's nothing worse than looking at a document with acronyms and going, I have no idea what this is, and don't
yeah,
expect them to look it up because they're not going to look it
no,
up.
no, no, not at all. And I would say, the other thing real important before you, lick the stamp or hit send, is have another set of eyes on it.
Yes.
Because we can't rely on spell check.
No,
Sometimes
no.
you might spell a word and it's spelled correctly for a different word and you don't catch it. It's not going to underline it for you.
Well, it's there,
The
there,
other
and
thing,
there. It's there, there, and
yeah,
there.
right.
You know,
Oh, yes.
there,
That's a
there,
big
there.
one, right?
It is. I just kind of, I go, I'm a grammar police. It's horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And
I'll
that
be
brings
reading
another
something and
point.
go,
Make sure you're using the proper words. And I'll use the example of affect and effect. Those
yes,
are two totally different meanings.
yes.
And you may not realize that you used the wrong one in the wrong place. And it kind of throws off the read of the paragraph and you might have the greatest paragraph going, and then you throw in the wrong word. So be mindful of that. And that's why another set of eyes is always good, just not for the basis of the grant because you're the grant writer, but those typos and sometimes just another set of eyes. You've been diving into this grant for hours maybe, and just have another set of fresh eyes look at it for the typos and things like
Well,
that.
if they can understand it, I always like somebody outside of the grant world to read it. And I'm like, did,
Yep.
did you get it? Did you understand it? Did it make
Yeah.
sense to you? Well, page 4, I really don't know what that paragraph stated. So you need to relook at that through their eyes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
that you're so right. Okay, now eligibility dates. So if the grant is due March 30th, can I call them and say, well, I can't get it to you until like April 3rd?
No, you sure can't. Because they have a time frame that they require that this funding be expended by. And so they make their deadline. And their deadline is their deadline. You can't get any extra time for it. The reason for that is because then they have to send it off to their team that reviews these. They might even do some research on the solution that you are proposing to this funding is going to do for your community. They might have a board that decides on this, and so they have to have that time to do that. And then there's a start and an end to this project. And so if this funding, let's say the proposal is due in March, and they anticipate that funding will be granted out in August, well, then it's usually a 12-month from August to August. And so you need to plan for that. And does your project time frame match up with those. You know, you may say you have to have this project done prior to that, then maybe this isn't a fit because they want you to expend this money within that time frame. And so look at those eligibility dates and make sure that A, you can get the grant turned in on time, and then B, that your project can sustain within the time frame that they're anticipating funding to come through.
Well, it's very good. Yeah, because their funding cycle will probably start over then. And they've already
Mhm.
let all those out. They've already done the grantorships on those. Um, so if you're writing this whole proposal, um, what are some of the things that people need to be aware of they need to put in it? I mean, you talked about eligibility dates, you talked about reported deadlines. Um, what about matching? Like match
Yeah. So
grants?
yeah. So if you have a matching grant somewhere with another funder and they said, you know, look, we'll give you this funding, but you need to find a match. You know, we're just a matching grant. Um, you've got to be able to tell that that match is secured. You can't say, well, you know, we think we have a matching grant for this, because your budget's going to show that you've got this matching grant. Otherwise, you'd be upside down on your budget. So you've got to declare that you've got funding coming from somewhere else. Is it secured? Do you have the absolute 100% verification that you are going to get this funding? You need to include that info so that they know that um, the project's not going to be upside down the minute they cut you the check. And so you need to declare that. And then you need to show also any in-kind or donated products or services that are going to go with this project. So let's say that the project is some a book children's book program, and you've already secured maybe a donation of 1,000 books that will just help. So that's 1,000 books you don't have to buy with the project money. You need to declare that as well to show that you have secured some things that are going to offset those costs. And in-kind donations and donations of time and service. Maybe it's someone certified doing something. Those all have value, and there's value associated with it, and you need to declare that. And I think the funders do appreciate an organization's seeking ways to offset actual raw costs. And so it could be used as an asset when you're writing a grant to show that you are making every attempt to keep costs down with donated things. And then you also have to make sure that you've put in some administrative time. Not all funders will fund administration, but they know that it exists, right? Because a program can't um, happen without someone either overseeing it or providing it directly. And so you've got to have your staff time and any expenses, travel, anything like that. Funders expect that line item to be in your budget. So don't say, "Oh, it's not going to cost anything administratively." It does. We're a business. We
Right.
have to. What's the cost of running this business? And so make sure you put it in there. And then if there's any staff development or training that is needed, if the person does have to get some sort of certification to oversee this project, that needs to be put in there as well. Even if you're not asking the funder to fund it,
Mhm.
you need to put that in there so that they know that it is going to be, you know, that's part of what the project is going to cost.
Well,
So
it's
that
doing
that
your due
definitely needs,
diligence. It's your due
yeah,
diligence and showing them your good faith effort toward this goal that you have.
yeah. And
That
and they want you to be transparent, completely transparent with their money. This is their money, and they want you to be transparent with it. So
one of my favorites that I've seen before, and I know you see it every year, is copying the words that are actually on the grant and
yeah,
then using those exact words. It's like, wait, first, that's a little bit of plagiarism. And
yeah,
second, come on,
yeah, yeah,
get a
yeah,
dictionary out. I mean, what happened to
yeah,
going through a dictionary or a thesaurus
yeah,
or coming up with some the same thought, but your own verbiage?
yeah. Yeah, the funders, they know what they wrote, right? So
Yeah.
if they're writing in their focus, their guidelines, we would like to fund uh food programs to end hunger, whatever, but they've used some real creative words and things like that. Don't copy that, because even if your project matches that 100%, they know what they wrote. And so if they read exactly what they wrote, then, did you not put any work into it? There are a lot of creative words that you can use. And I talk about buzzwords a lot, and you can get your same um, message across, but be creative. So use your thesaurus, but not too much, because also you don't want to sound the complete opposite where your whole paragraph is nothing but words out of the thesaurus.
Right.
But you can get creative and don't repeat words. So if a word is, we're going to partner with this one, we're going to partner with that one, maybe instead of always using partner in every four, paragraphs, find a word that also means collaborate. Um, you can use partner, but don't use it every sentence. And look at other words, like maybe this is a new program, but maybe it sounds better if it's innovative. Um,
Right.
Impact is a great word, but everybody uses impact so much. And so you want to make sure that you do lend on your thesaurus a little bit. And you want to make sure that you don't use the same word over and over, and you definitely don't want to use their words out of their guidelines word for word, because it is kind of not good.
No, I've seen that. Now you're getting ready to submit. You've got your first one, and I'm sure you tell people the same thing I tell people. Start small.
Yes,
Um, Local small grants help you get your little toes wet.
yes,
Especially if you win one, you're like, I did something right. Correct.
exactly.
I mean, I did something right. So, and if you don't win a grant, will they tell you why?
Um, they do and they don't. A lot of them, are general verbiage. It just doesn't align. Some of them will go into detail and tell you, exactly. But either way, there's a reason, right? Either it didn't align with them, they ran out of money, they granted out other things that they saw as maybe a higher need than what you're proposing to do. But I when I first started writing grants 30 years ago, I used to get so down. I'm like, oh, I really had, like, I wrote this good. I did a great job. Like that's a no-brainer. People should just be putting the money out there. And I would get down. And I've learned over years, and now especially reviewing grants, is don't get discouraged, because just because maybe it wasn't a fit right now doesn't mean maybe in the future it could be. But the other thing is, the more grants you write, even if you don't get funded with it, the more practice you have,
Yeah.
and the better you get at it. And you can take some of the verbiage that maybe you wrote in one grant, and use it in another grant if the paragraph was just the best paragraph you ever wrote. Um, just because they didn't fund it doesn't mean it wasn't a great paragraph. It just didn't fit with their focus at that time. Um, and so I would say that you just get better. Not every grant is going to get granted. Not every funder is going to see the need or going to be able to fund you for whatever reason. And so just look at it as training.
And say that you get a grant. Yay. And it could be just $5,000 or
Oh, just 5,000. That could do a lot.
that's a bunch. Then what happens? How do you administer to that? I mean,
Yeah.
there's
So you've got
rules.
to monitor it, right? You got to monitor it. You have to document its progress, capture those successes along the way. Don't wait till the end and say, yay, we did this. capture those moments as they happen throughout the time of the grant. If the grant is 12 months, then for 12 months, you should be monitoring it. You should be documenting things as they go along, and you should be tracking the success. You should be taking photos and getting permission. um, and you should be writing little success stories along the way. Because come, let's say it's a January to December grant, come December, you're not going to remember that in February there was a hoo-hoo moment. You should document that hoo-hoo moment at that time, because you're going to want to let the funder know that what they did was wonderful, and what they did to make such a great impact and solve something in your community was because of their funding. And so you want to track that along the way. Whatever you think is important to track, you should also track maybe some hurdles along the way, not only for you to learn maybe how to do things differently during that project, but you do want to track that and document those hurdles along the way. And then, of course, there's either going to be mid reports that are going to be due, maybe 6 months in. The funder's going to go, hey, what you doing with our money? And
Right.
how's it going? And then there will be an end of grant report. And that's a little bit more intense. They're going to want some more stuff from you. And you'll be ready because you're documenting all the way. Not every funder will want a 6 month review, but if they are, then you've already tracked some stuff along the way, and you can let them know how it's going. So um, keep copies of everything that are related. If it's receipts, if the grant is allowing you to purchase some things, keep those receipts. Keep a folder. This is the grant. This is the project. Keep the receipts, canceled checks. Well, you probably have access to those. Anything pertaining to the project, because when that end of grant report is due, they may ask you to prove that you use the money for what you
Okay.
said you did. And you should be able to. It's all about transparency. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to produce anything that they ask for at the end of that grant period.
Well, and that's why highlighters are such
They
a thing, because
are.
in the actual document that you've received this, they're going to send you that letter. They may send you their timeline along with that letter. Otherwise, it's already on there or it's on their website. Uh,
Yep.
and you need to highlight what those dates are. If you get that August 1st, are they going to expect a report in the next month, or is it 3 months? Okay, mark that, mark it on your calendar, make sure that you've got your yahoos along the way,
Yep.
success, your copies of receipts, whatever it's going to be. Because it always cracks me up when somebody says, well, I got this, but I didn't, we were so busy taking care of it that we didn't document anything. And I'm like, what? Why? I mean,
Yeah.
so it's really tough, like you said, to go back. You're not going to remember everything because everything else is still going on. You're still running your organization. And so if you hire somebody to do grants and they're working on their own, you hire them as an independent contractor type thing,
Sure.
hire grants. And I wish more people would do that, because it's good to have somebody that's already knowledgeable in that side of it and hire them.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's a percentage of the grant that they are awarded as part of this. Sometimes they just do the grant. Sometimes they do the grant and the administration part of it
Hmm.
as well. So it just depends on what your agreement looks like with this contractor to do that. And I like it because, they have to have their own liability. They have to have their own tools. They don't have to take up space in your organization, because sometimes you haven't got the space to put
Yeah.
on somebody else to do that. Um, so tell me about, um, sometimes the people that are giving the grants, they want their logo used appropriately on different items. Like what does that all mean? If somebody says, oh, well, we require you to use our logo. Well, what if somebody says, well, I don't want to use that logo?
Yeah, you should use that logo, especially if it's something that was upfront. It was stipulated upfront, you know, should you be granted, we expect A, B, and C, and you should follow through with A, B, and C. Otherwise, don't apply. Don't apply for that because this funder, some would tell you, and they'll let you know. Not all of them require it, but some funders want that kind of accolades, to say this program was brought to you by. And so it might be a logo on your website that is the part of the website that's maybe highlighting that project. It could be the flyer for that. If it's, say, Meals on Wheels or something, or Meals for Seniors, and maybe they just want their logo on the meals. I don't know. But whatever it is, you need to ask them, and ask them if they would like that or if they require that. Some don't require it at all, but you should offer it. You should absolutely offer it. We've got a funder right now that's funding one of our internal programs, and they're all over our website as part of that program's funder. Um, it also helps for future conversations about maybe future funding. If they look at you and go, wow, they're really a great partner and they gave us a little bit of this. Not all of them want that though. um, they not all of them want thank yous in the way of certain things. There's an organization that's a few towns over, and that person, every time they get something funded, I'm going to get them a plaque. Well, the plaques are, a hundred and some dollars a piece. And so there goes a hundred and some dollars of that funder's money into a form of a plaque that they'll never hang, because that's not what they want. They don't want that. And so having a conversation, if you're able to, could be an email after the fact, after you've been awarded that, say, hey, we really would like to put your logo on this, that, or the other. Is that okay? Um, Having that conversation, if you're able to, is so important, because you want to know what the grantor's intentions and expectations are as far as how they're getting accolades. Um, but if nothing else, even if they ask for it or not, thank them. Send them a thank you letter. There is some point person that you have. It might not be the CEO of the foundation, and that's okay. But whoever your contact person is, make sure that you acknowledge that you appreciate the fact that they have decided, out of all the applications they've received, they've decided to grant it to your organization. A thank you goes a long way. And so make sure that you thank them. Could be an email, however it is, a handwritten little thank you card, whatever it means. Please make sure you thank them, because it's so important. Um,
It always flips my trigger if they haven't thanked an
yeah.
organization. Well, they didn't ask for it. I've heard that, and I'm like,
Mm,
um, that doesn't mean it's not your character showing that you didn't send a thank you. And I think you probably received them from me. I like handwritten thank yous.
I did receive it.
Even if it's short and sweet, it's just, you have to be appreciative
Yeah,
of this because they don't have to do it. They could stop doing it, the grants completely. They could stop doing scholarships. They could stop doing it's easier for them.
yeah.
They just stop. But yeah, what
And
about
I'll share a little story with you, if you don't mind. And
yeah.
it's not about grants so much, but about thanking. So there was a couple that lived in another state, and they decided that they were going to hit the road and look at different communities. Him and his wife, it was a rabbi and his wife, and that's not a joke. But they decided they were going to hit all these small little communities. And so they found out that wherever there was a community, there was a United Way. And they were like, how cool is that? So they decided that they were going to give $100 to every United Way in the United States. They mailed off $100 to every United Way in the United States. Big ones, small ones. 1,600 United Ways got $100. Fast forward now, I am a believer in thank yous, and this just kind of proves my point. I do thank yous whether you give $1 or $10,000. It doesn't matter. You get a thank you from me. So fast forward about 3 weeks, I had sent off a thank you to them. Thank you for the $100. You don't even know us. and you've entrusted us with your money, to use in our community. About 3 weeks later, I get a phone call from the rabbi and his wife, and they said, we wanted to thank you for your thank you, because out of the 1,600 gifts that they did, they received two thank yous
Ouch.
total.
Ouch.
So then, fast forward about a month later, Rabbi and his wife called me again and said, where else can we help you with funding? We want to give you about $5,000. Can your community use it?
Well, there you go. There you
And
go. I mean,
so,
there you go.
yeah, yeah. So, again, if nothing else, whether you think they want it or not, it doesn't cost anything but a little bit of your time. Um, find a way to thank that funder, whether it's an email, a letter to your contact person, a phone call to the grantee or the reviewer, however it is, please make sure that they understand you appreciate their entrusting you with their funds.
Yeah, we need to do more of that.
Yeah, yeah, we
Um,
do.
yeah. Now, getting discouraged if you don't win
Yeah, you
can be
shouldn't.
really hard. I mean, some
I
people take it
know.
personally. I don't think they like me. And I said, you know what? They don't know you.
They don't know you. They don't know you, and they may thoroughly 1,000% believe in what you are hoping to accomplish, but they just can't fund it out because maybe it's not in the right geographic area. Maybe you didn't really look deep enough and find out that they only do these counties in Illinois and not the one that you happen to be in. It could be a number of things. Maybe they just met their max. Maybe what you're proposing to do doesn't just qualify slightly. It doesn't mean that it's a bad project, doesn't mean that it was a bad application that you wrote. Doesn't mean any of that. What it means is it just isn't a fit right now, or it just isn't a fit. But don't get discouraged, because to me, I out of all the grants I've ever written over the last, number of years, as well as the ones that I've reviewed, I look at grants that I'm reviewing now and go, oh, I probably could have worded that differently, but I get what they're trying to do. I get it. And so I'm not going to, deny them because of that. I might deny them just because we cannot fund this program at this time, or because I know that there is a duplicate program out there that maybe I should encourage them not working in silos. But there's reasons for that. I look at every grant I write, whether it's successful or not, is a learning experience. It's just part of the training. You learn what worked, what didn't work, might work for something else. So don't get discouraged, because you're not going to get every grant. I'll tell you that right now. You can write 1,000 grants and you're not going to get 1,000 grants.
So,
The return on your time is not going to come out, so you should write a lot of grants. But just know that you're not going to get a lot of grants,
well,
but don't get discouraged.
yeah, and it's easy to get discouraged, and you know that, but the more you write, the better you're going to be. Um, and always having somebody read it
Yeah.
after you've prepared it, because of so many things, putting the wrong buzzwords, like you said,
Yeah.
the acronyms, um, just so many different things come into play,
Yeah.
when it comes to all of that. And I had one gal say to me once, she was going out to this grant. She asked me if I would review it. I said, okay, email it over, make sure it's in PDF. I'm not going to be, I don't want to be, I don't like to receive things in a Word document unless I specifically say, I'm giving it to you in Word. You can update it as you see fit.
Yeah.
Uh, but give me back in the same Word document what you've updated so that I can keep, a copious record of that. So next
Yeah.
year they say, well, you wrote it, and I'll say, no, you did. Here's your bet. I think I warned you a year ago not to do that, but you did anyway. And okay, that's all right, but now we have to go back to square one and, listen to me the first damn time. So, right? We've all done that. We've
Yes, yes, yes.
it's like, okay, you know what? You get so stuck in your ways. And
Yeah,
the grants that I wrote 30 years ago are not the same format because 30 years ago, everything had to be paper.
yeah.
Everything was paper. Now, I I was reviewing a grant document for a nonprofit that asked me to review it, and I said, "Do you see that this has to go in a USB, little USB format? Do you realize that there's some states attorneys now that won't accept paper documents? They want a DVD or a USB." And I'm like, "Okay, but they get thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of stuff. So, all
Right.
right, just want to catalog that one." And they're like, "Well, we don't want to do that though because we like the colors that we're using and we like." I said, "Okay, stop. This document shouldn't have any more colors than black
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah.
white paper. Don't use colored paper." That was my another favorite. "Well, we're gonna put it on blue because it looks pretty on blue." No,
No,
stop.
no.
And you have to put it all on a USB port. "Well, we don't want to do that." I said, "Then don't go after the grant."
Yeah, yeah.
"But we're going to go after the grant." I said, "Okay, document right now my words." I said, "Do not do that. Do it exactly the way that, it's just like, well, they get into their minds that they know better. And
Well,
that,
and they think that a lot of the bells and whistles and the blue paper and the sheet protectors and things like that are going to make it more attractive, and it may actually just turn on them the opposite way. Because as a reviewer, I would be like, wow, this blue is really loud. I can hardly read the words I'm trying to read.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there has to be a lot of eye rolling on the people that are funding out and just getting these documents going. Okay, they didn't follow page one at all, which, I got to tell you, and you probably see this and feel it, that if you can't follow the directions of a guideline on how to submit, are you really instilling in them any positive reinforcement that you're going to be able to follow the grant itself?
Yeah, no, it definitely would be an alarm. Like, yeah, if you haven't followed, yeah, steps 1 through 10, and they do outline them perfectly. You fill this out, you submit it this way, you wait till this date. I mean, it's just all, yeah. Then it would be really hard as a funder to say, what are they going to do with our money?
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to do with our money? If I tell them that they can't spend it on, or that we want to spend it on this, we want to fund this, are they going to go rogue and fund it on something else? Like it
Oh,
really would put kind of yeah,
yeah.
uh, kind of a caution as a reviewer to say,
Oh God,
gosh, darn it, they didn't even follow line one.
that's a big stop sign on there, and they're just like,
Yeah,
we're gonna go out, we're gonna move past this one, and maybe we'll get back to it, maybe not, because they
yeah,
obviously didn't follow the rules, which would tell them in a sneak portal that they're probably not going to be following the rules the whole time. And
yeah,
people don't realize that if they don't follow the rules, and once they've received the grant, and if they don't give the documents that are required or when requested, they can lose that grant midstream.
oh,
That's
absolutely,
can pull that grant midstream and say,
absolutely,
you can't follow the rules.
yeah. Yeah.
And I've
And,
seen it
and
happen.
we've done that before as a funder. We've had to do that before because we, 6 months in, this was years ago, we found out that, the funding was supposed to be going towards, one specific thing. And, it was like, well, are you spending the funding on this? And it was like crickets. And I'm like, okay, we need to look a little deeper into this and find out, what's happening here. And we pulled. In fact, we didn't have to pull the funding. They had been granted it. We just haven't dispensed the checks, and so they didn't get a check.
And
We
it happens,
yeah, yeah.
you have to
We
follow
had to because
protocol.
this is donor money that we have.
Right.
But just like that, funders that are, you're going for grants, maybe if even big box companies, it might not be donor money, but it's somebody's money. And it's that company's money, and they want to do something. They want to ride the ride with you. If you're going to make a great impact on your community, they want to be a part of it.
I do.
But you've got to follow along with how they want to do it. It's their money. Even when they let it go and release it to you, it's still their money. You are utilizing those funds to solve something in your community, but they're still there. They're still riding on the train with you. They're still a passenger. They're not just, here's the money, have fun.
Yeah.
They're still in that train car with you.
Well, that's called a scholarship. That's not called a grant, right?
Yes,
I mean,
go.
it's,
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
give scholarship money away, and hope that they use it in the light in which you have given. But a
yeah,
grant is a whole different ballgame, and it's not for the weak,
absolutely.
it's not for the weak, and it's not for the timid. But it is for anybody that can just follow the directions, follow the path, making sure that those three P's, project, plan, and permission, are all at the beginning stages, and making sure that by following those timelines and guidelines like you've set forth, and that you do and United Ways do, that you're going to be able to help more people in the
Right.
long run, as a funder, and you can't shift it midway. So
No,
if your plan is to get a grant for $5,000 to feed the homeless, then by God, you better be feeding the homeless.
absolutely.
You can't change it midstream and say, well, we meant to include, puppies and kitties. Well, sorry, that's not what this grant was for.
Right,
But the large companies, Purina and some of the other large companies, have foundations that do that. So
right.
they're not saying they don't like dogs and cats, so don't start yelling at them. Oh, well, you just don't
That's
like
right.
cats. It has nothing to do with that, and everything to do with how we set it up. Karen, whoo, this is a lot of information. This is a lot of great information. People that are watching this and are subscribing to my channel, please subscribe.
Oh, please
It's
subscribe.
free. It's free. It's one little button. It's free. I'm not charging you anything. I'm not going to start e-blasting you craziness. We're just trying to reach more people to make sure that our
Absolutely.
nonprofit can stay safe and strong, and learn tidbits from leaders in industry like you, and who are giving of their time so freely.
Well,
Thank you.
and I would encourage people subscribe and share, because you've got friends who also need to subscribe to Sally's channel for sure. I know you all have friends that need Sally in their life.
Well, not everybody's going to agree with you on that one. They're going to say, no. But I've got a jar of naughty words. I'll send them one of those. But what I want to say is that, if you're a nonprofit that I'm already assisting, if you're a nonprofit that works with Karen, or you're reading this and you want some of these notes, email me, and let me know that you want these different notes, and I'll make sure that you do get them in a PDF, because you're not going to change this kind of documentation. But yeah, please share this with board members too. And people say, well, I'm just on the board, I don't need to learn anything.
Oh,
Oh, for the love of Pete. Yeah, you do. And we're going to have Norma Lansing on coming up, talking about board development and boards of directors.
perfect.
She was at the Effingham Chamber of Commerce for 40 years. Can you imagine how many boards she had to deal with?
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
that, that's too much. So, and you'll probably be watching it going, oh yeah, I've had to
Yeah,
deal
yeah,
with that too.
for
Oh, yeah.
sure.
There's always that one that knows more than you. Okay. So instead of supporting, which is their job, number one job, support the top paid executive, because that's your employee. So it's going to be interesting. So Karen, without further ado, I can't thank you enough, for doing this. And don't get too comfortable. I may be tapping on your shoulder again, because you have so much knowledge, and
Ah,
I want people to understand it. And the people that benefit from the United Way of Grundy County, now you know what you need to do, to get yourself together to prepare. And to get that kind of information over to Karen and her team, if you're looking for that kind of a grant, then you need to follow the process. Don't
Yep.
circumvent it. You know, people starting a new nonprofit, well, I'm going to do this first and this first. I'm like, no, come on back. Hey, you know, let's bring back. You
Yeah.
can't circumvent the process because
Yeah.
once you start that, it's going to be a mess. So, Karen, thank you so much again for all.
Thank you for having me.
Karen Nall, not-for-profit certified, 15 years at the Grundy County United Way, one of the best in the nation. And I thank you. Oh, I forgot. Thank you, Karen.
Oh,